He's sleeping here tonight. You can take the couch, she said about her male best friend who'd been drinking too much because she needed to watch over him in case something happened. I didn't say anything, just packed my things while she was tending to him and left a note. Enjoy your patient. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. It wasn't the first time Mark had needed Qley, but it was the first time she offered him my side of the bed. We'd been together for 3 years. I'd seen her through the stress of her layoff, cooking meals while she sent out resumes. I'd driven through the night to be with her when her dad had his heart scare, holding her in that sterile hospital chair for hours. I'd even, against my better judgment, tolerated Mark's constant, looming presence in our lives, her charismatic, perpetually crisis-ridden best friend from college. The freelance photographer whose art was always on the verge of being seen, whose landlords were always unreasonable, whose exes were always crazy. Qley's personal charity project, wrapped in a leather jacket and good cheekbones. The call came at 12:37 a.m. on a Tuesday. My phone buzzed first, lighting up the nightstand. Mark. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, her phone rang. I heard her murmuring, the bed shifting as she sat up. Oh, Mark? No, where are you? That's so many. Are you safe? A familiar, heavy feeling settled in my gut. I stared at the ceiling. She hung up and turned to me. In the blue-tinged dark, I could see the performative concern etched on her face. That was Mark. He's at the Hollow Bar. He says he's had way too much to drink to drive, and he can't afford an Uber all the way to his place. So he'll get a cab, I said, my voice flat with sleep. Or he'll sleep it off in his car. He's a 30-year-old man, Qley. He's upset, Alex. His gallery show was a disaster tonight. Nothing sold. He's devastated. She was already throwing the covers back. I told him to come here. I sat up. Here. Want? Because he needs a friend. He can't be alone right now. He can sleep on the couch, I said, the line we'd established and held for 2 years. She was out of bed now, pulling an extra pillow and the gray fleece blanket from the linen closet. She didn't look at me. It's not good for him to be on the couch. He needs proper rest. He's emotionally fragile. A cold clarity began to cut through the fog of annoyance. Where is he supposed to sleep then? She finally met my eyes, clutching the pillow to her chest like a shield. He's sleeping here tonight. You can take the couch. The words hung in the air, absurd and offensive. I actually let out a short, disbelieving laugh. You are joking. Don't be heartless. He needs someone to watch over him in case something happens. What if he gets sick? What if he has an anxiety attack? You know how he gets. Watch over him. In our bed. The emphasis on our felt pathetic even as I said it. It's not like that, Alex. She rolled her eyes, the ultimate dismissal. God, why are you always so insecure about him? If you really loved me, you'd understand I'm just being a good friend. He has no one else. There it was. The twisted logic. My boundary was insecurity. My discomfort was a failure of love. Her prioritization of another man was noble compassion. And if you really loved me, I said, my voice quieter now, dangerously calm, you wouldn't ask me to leave my own bed for another man. She stiffened. The mask of concern flickered, revealing a flash of impatience, a frustration that I wasn't playing my assigned role in her drama. I'm not asking you to leave your bed. I'm asking you to be understanding for one night, to help someone who's hurting. But I guess that's too much for you. She turned toward the bedroom door, ready to go wait for her wounded bird in the living room. Well, I am asking. So what's it going to be? I didn't answer. I just watched her go. The front door opened 20 minutes later. I heard his slurred voice, overly loud, and her shushing him, a giggle in her tone that was never there for my rough days. I heard the shuffle of feet, the thump of a bag. I stood in the shadow of our bedroom doorway. The scene in the living room was a sickening tableau. Mark was slumped in the armchair, looking the perfect picture of tragic artistry. Qley was kneeling beside him, placing a glass of water on the side table. I just feel like such a failure, Qley, he mumbled, dragging a hand through his hair. You're not a failure. Your work is brilliant. The world just isn't ready for it. Her hand was on his arm. Come on, let's get you settled. She helped him up. He leaned on her heavily, more than necessary. As they moved toward the hallway, toward our bedroom, his eyes drifted over her shoulder and met mine in the dim light. There was no drunken haze in that look. It was clear, sharp, and brimming with triumph. A quick, almost imperceptible smirk touched his lips before he let his head loll back onto her shoulder. She led him into the bedroom, her voice a soft murmur. I stayed in the doorway. She guided him to my side of the bed, the side I slept on, where my books sat on the nightstand. He collapsed onto it with a sigh. She bent over, pulling the comforter up to his chin with a tenderness I recognized. "Try to sleep, okay?" she whispered. "You'll stay?" His voice was a pathetic mumble. "I'll be right here. I'm just going to get a damp cloth for your forehead. You're a little warm." She brushed his hair back. Then she turned and finally saw me standing there. Her expression didn't change to guilt or apology. It hardened into defiance. A silent "see? This is what a good person does." She walked past me without a word, headed for the bathroom. The message was clear. The decision was made. I could either go sleep on the couch in my own home, accepting my demotion, or I could make a scene. I finally understood. This wasn't about Mark. This was my final exam. A test of how much disrespect I would package as love. How small I was willing to become to fit into the life she was building, where she was the saintly heroine and I was the loyal, faceless supporter. And Mark was the perpetual damsel in distress, a role that guaranteed him her undivided attention forever. She returned with the cloth, her focus entirely on her patient. I turned and walked away. The couch held no appeal. The idea of lying there, listening to the silence of my own bedroom where she tended to another man, was a special kind of humiliation I refused to volunteer for. A strange, electric calm settled over me. The noise of betrayal in my head just stopped, replaced by a silent, operational clarity. The debate was over. She had shown me the door. I just decided to walk further than she intended. I went to the hall closet and pulled out my travel suitcase, the one we'd used for a weekend in Vermont 8 months ago. I wheeled it into the spare room/office, the door clicking shut softly behind me. I worked with the efficiency of a surgeon. First, the essentials: passport, social security card, the title to my car, my laptop and charger. Then, from our shared desk, the folder with my stock statements and the paperwork for the retirement account I'd started alone before her. I took only what was mine. In the bedroom, I moved quietly. They were both asleep. Mark was sprawled diagonally across the bed, snoring softly. Qley was curled in a chair she'd pulled up to the bedside, her head resting on her arms on the mattress, one hand still near his shoulder. A sentinel. It would have been touching if it wasn't my life. I opened my dresser drawers. I took jeans, t-shirts, socks, underwear. I left the expensive sweater she'd bought me for my birthday. It never fit right anyway. I left the silly novelty socks from our first Christmas. I left everything that was an us item. From the bathroom, I took my toothbrush, razor, a single towel. I left the cologne she liked on me. Every movement was deliberate, quiet. There was no rage in it, no sorrow. It was a logistical problem I was solving. The emotional divorce had happened the moment she'd issued her ultimatum. This was just the physical settlement. The last thing I packed was from the top shelf of the closet, a small, locked fireproof box. Inside were my grandfather's watch and a few old letters from my brother, deployed overseas. Things that mattered to me long before Qley. I zipped the suitcase closed. I took one last look around the room. At the man in my bed. At the woman keeping watch over him. I felt nothing. Not even anger. Just a vast, empty space where my love for her used to be. In the kitchen, the note. I found the pen she always hated, a cheap plastic bank promo with a stubborn click. On the counter, next to the fruit bowl she'd picked out at a flea market, I laid a single sheet of plain paper. I didn't write a novel. I didn't explain my reasoning. She knew. I didn't express hurt. She wouldn't care. I didn't say goodbye. That sentiment had expired. 2 lines. That's all. Enjoy your patient. Don't contact me. I set the pen down squarely on top of the note. Final. A period. I wheeled my suitcase to the door, slipped on my shoes, and took my winter coat from the hook. My keys were in the bowl. I separated my car key from the ring that held my key to this apartment. I left her key there, in the bowl. It made a faint, metallic ping as it landed. I opened the door. The cold night air rushed in, clean and bracing. I didn't look back. I stepped into the hallway, pulling the door shut behind me. The latch clicked with a soft, definitive sound. In the silent underground parking garage, I loaded my suitcase into the trunk. I got into the driver's seat, started the car. Only then did I pull out my phone. I opened my messaging app. My best friend, Jake. I typed 3 sentences. It's over. Need the couch for a few days. Be there in 20. His reply was almost instant. Doors open. You okay? Yes. I meant it. Before I put the car in reverse, I opened my phone settings. I went to her contact. I blocked her number. I opened Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. Blocked, blocked, blocked. It took less than a minute. An administrative task. Then I drove away. Not in a fury. Not with tears in my eyes. I drove away the way you leave a job that no longer serves you. With relief and a quiet focus on what comes next. The silence in the car was not empty. It was full of possibility. Jake's couch was a sagging, corduroy monster that smelled faintly of stale beer and dog. It was the most comfortable thing I'd ever lain on. For 3 days, I didn't call in sick. I went to work. I wrote code, attended meetings, ate a turkey sandwich at my desk. My colleagues noticed nothing. The world kept spinning. It was the first revelation. My heart could be a crater, and my hands could still type functional, elegant lines of Python. Life was compartmentalized in a way I'd never appreciated. I didn't explain much to Jake. The first night, over a beer he shoved into my hand, I just said, she chose. So I left. He'd known about Mark. His face darkened. The fuck did she do, Alex? It doesn't matter, I said, and I meant it. Narrating the injury felt like giving it power, letting it out of the sealed container I'd built for it in my mind. It's done. He clinked his bottle against mine. Okay, couch is yours as long as you need. The silence at Jake's was different. It wasn't the tense, waiting silence of the apartment in the weeks leading up to the night, where I'd walk on eggshells wondering when the next Mark emergency would derail our plans. This was a neutral silence. A blank canvas. It was mine. My phone was a brick. No notifications except work emails and Jake asking if I wanted pizza. I'd blocked her everywhere, but the digital umbilical cord had phantom limbs. I'd catch myself glancing at it, a muscle memory of anxiety, waiting for the text that would apologize or, more likely, demand something. The absence of that dread was a physical relief, like putting down a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. Jake became my reluctant news feed. On the 4th morning, he slid his phone across the breakfast bar. She's texting me now. I looked. A screenshot of a message from Qley to him. Jake, is Alex with you? Please tell him to call me. This is ridiculous. I pushed the phone back. You don't have to be the middleman. Tell her whatever you want. I told her you were alive, and that was all she needed to know. He paused. She wrote back. He's really going to throw away 3 years over one misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. The word was so deliberately small, so insultingly reductive. It reframed her calculated choice and my final boundary as a simple miscommunication. I felt nothing but a mild, distant contempt. Don't answer, I said. The attempt shifted. Later that day, another screenshot. Mark left this morning. Are you happy now? Can we please talk like adults? Then, that evening, I'm not going to beg, Alex. But you're being childish. Come home so we can talk this out. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Each message was a masterpiece of non-apology. They contained claims of my emotional mismanagement, blowing this out of proportion, childish, a declaration that the perceived threat was gone, Mark left, and a demand for my return to the negotiating table, a table where, historically, I was the only one who ever conceded. I didn't feel angry reading them. I felt like a biologist observing a predictable species behavior. She doesn't get it, Jake muttered, shaking his head. She thinks this is a fight you're having. She doesn't realize the war's over. He was right. There was no war. I'd surrendered the field. I had no interest in the territory anymore. The next week, I used my lunch break to find an apartment. A modern, sterile studio in a building with a gym and a concierge. It had no history, no memories in the walls. I signed a 12-month lease. When the property manager asked why I was moving, I said, for a change of scenery. It was the truth. I moved in with a suitcase, an air mattress, and a single chair. The emptiness was luxurious. I began to rebuild a routine that had nothing to do with her. I joined a climbing gym downtown. The physical exertion was a pure, mind-clearing burn. I reconnected with 2 friends from college I'd slowly drifted from, because Qley always found them a bit immature. We went to a trivia night and came in dead last, laughing the whole time. Jake kept me updated, his reports becoming a morbid comedy. A mutual friend, Sarah, ran into Qley and Mark at a bougie brunch place. She said they were cozy, Jake relayed, making air quotes. Like sharing pancakes cozy. Qley posted an Instagram a few days later. He showed me a picture of them on a rocky hiking trail. The city sprawled below. Qley was in expensive new athletic wear, beaming. Mark was behind her, his hands on her shoulders, looking into the camera with a smoldering intensity I'm sure he practiced. The caption, when you find someone who finally appreciates your adventurous side, sunrise over mountains, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag no settling. I stared at it. The hashtag no settling was the dagger. The public branding of our entire relationship as her settling. The narrative was clear, stable, reliable. Alex was the boring, safe compromise. Crisis-ridden, freeloading Mark was the adventure. I thought of the 2 vacations we'd canceled because Mark had a creative meltdown and needed Qley. I remembered the countless weekends spent listening to his problems over expensive cocktails I usually paid for. The old me would have felt a hot lance of jealousy, of inadequacy. The new me felt a profound, almost pitying understanding. She wasn't choosing a better man. She was choosing a better story. One where she was the exciting savior, not the partner in a quiet, equal life. The climb to that mountain vista probably ended with her driving, paying for the gas, and listening to him complain about his blisters. I handed the phone back to Jake. Good for them. You're not mad. What's the point? I said. She's someone I used to know. Her Instagram captions aren't my concern. That was the second revelation. Indifference isn't an emotion you feel. It's the absence of all the others. It's silence. The karma didn't arrive with thunderclaps. It trickled in, quiet and inevitable, like water finding cracks in a foundation. It was a Tuesday evening, about 3 weeks after I'd left. I was assembling a flat-pack bookshelf for my new apartment, a screwdriver in my hand, a podcast playing softly in the background. My phone buzzed on the floor. Jake. I put it on speaker. Hey, what's up? His voice was a mix of shock and grim satisfaction. You are not going to believe this. Sarah just called me. Mark got arrested. I paused, the screwdriver hovering. Go on. Petty theft. Apparently, he walked out of a high-end camera store downtown with a lens worth like $2,000 tucked in his jacket. The security footage was crystal clear. Idiot didn't even wear a hat. I went back to turning the screw. Huh, that's not all. Jake continued, his excitement growing. When the cops looked into him, it opened a whole thing. The guy's got debts everywhere. He's been borrowing money from like 5 different people with the same sob story. Funds are tied up, waiting for a big client payout. Your girl Qley loaned him $3,000 last week for new portfolio equipment. I felt a cold, clear click of understanding. The new hiking gear. The fancy brunches. It wasn't a brand new chapter. It was the same old grift, and now she was the mark. Sarah said it gets messy, eh? Jake said. One of the other people he borrowed from is a woman he'd been seeing for months. Some graphic designer. She thought they were exclusive. She found out about Qley and lost her mind. She's the one who apparently tipped off the camera store manager, saying to watch Mark because he was a con artist. The pieces assembled themselves into a pathetic, obvious picture. The perpetual victim, playing multiple saviors against each other. How's Qley taking it? I asked, my voice devoid of any inflection. I was asking for data, not out of concern. According to Sarah, she's a wreck. Embarrassed, humiliated, and out $3,000 she probably doesn't have. Her friend group is fracturing. Some feel bad for her. Others are saying she made her bed when she... Jake trailed off. When she chose him over me. I finished for him, calmly. It's fine, Jake. You can say it. Yeah, that. There's a lot of I told you so circulating privately. Her sister Maya is apparently furious with her. I finished tightening the screw. The bookshelf stood upright, sturdy and functional. Well, I said, that's a series of unfortunate choices. There was a long pause on Jake's end. That's it. A series of unfortunate choices? Alex, he played her. He stole from her. She's getting roasted by her friends. Don't you feel, I don't know, a little sorry for her? I put the screwdriver down. I looked at the clean lines of the new bookshelf, the empty shelves waiting to be filled with things I chose. I felt the quiet peace of my own space. No, I said, and the word was absolute. I feel nothing. And that's the point, Jake. If I felt sorry for her, it would mean I was still connected to her drama. I'm not. Her consequences are the direct result of her decisions. She saw a wounded artist. I saw a user. She called my judgment insecurity. Now she's out $3,000 and her reputation. My sympathy wouldn't pay her back or fix her friends. It would just be noise. Jake was silent for a moment. Shit. You're really free of it, aren't you? I'm in my apartment, building a bookshelf, I said, a faint smile touching my lips for the first time during the call. That's all I'm doing. What she's doing is no longer any concern of mine. I heard him let out a low whistle. Okay then, I just thought you'd want to know. I appreciate it, I said, and I did. It was information. A postscript to a closed book. But you can stop the updates now. Really, it's over. We hung up. I slid the last shelf into place. The podcast host was laughing about something. I laughed a little too, at nothing in particular. The air in my apartment was clean and quiet and entirely my own. The chaos she'd chosen was now hers to manage. I felt no schadenfreude, just the profound, simple gratitude of a man who had stepped off a sinking ship and was now, finally, dry. The news of Mark's arrest and betrayal was the pebble that started the landslide. My silence was the avalanche that followed. The first attempt was clumsy, a transparent ploy for sympathy. 2 days after Jake's call, a text from an unknown number lit up my screen. I guess you heard. I should have listened to you. Can we talk? It was her. The tone was perfectly curated, contrite, acknowledging my foresight, posing as a simple request. It was the opening move in a game I had quit playing. I pictured her drafting it, erasing, trying to find the balance between apology and maintaining the upper hand of being the one to reach out. I typed a single character. No. I then blocked the number. The entire exchange took 8 seconds. The second attempt involved a proxy. 3 days later, my desk phone at work rang. The receptionist said, "Line 2 for you, Alex." It's Amaya, Chloe's older sister. The sensible one, who'd once told me at a barbecue I was too good for the drama. Now, she was drafted into the drama. I picked up. "This is Alex." "Alex, hi. It's Maya." Her voice was strained, trying for warm and landing on nervous. "Listen, I know this is awkward. I wouldn't call you at work, but Chloe's really hurting." I said nothing. The silence forced her to fill it. "This thing with Mark, it's bad. He was a user, and she sees that now. Clearly, she feels awful. She misses you. She realizes what she had." A pause. "Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? People make mistakes." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city skyline. I used my professional, client meeting voice. "Maya, I appreciate you calling. I have no ill will toward Qley. I wish her no harm. But I'm not part of her life anymore, and I have no interest in rejoining it. Please wish her well for me." "Alex, wait," she started, but the placid finality in my tone had thrown her. "Take care, Maya." I hung up gently. The third attempt was the ambush. A week later, on a rainy Thursday evening, my intercom buzzed. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked over and pressed the button. Yes. No voice, just the hollow sound of the lobby. A minute later, a soft knock on my door. Not Jake's hearty pound. A tentative tap tap tap. A cold suspicion settled in me. I looked through the peephole. Qley stood there, soaked. Her hair was plastered to her face, mascara smudged under her eyes. She looked smaller, younger, utterly defeated. She was clutching her phone like a lifeline. The performance was Oscar-worthy, but the genuine misery in her eyes was not an act. This was the consequence, raw and unedited. I stood still for a full 30 seconds. I could have not answered. I could have been the ghost. But a part of me, the part that needed to cement my own freedom, to look the past in the eye and feel nothing, wanted to open the door, to hear the script she'd prepared, to deny her the final line. I turned the deadbolt and opened the door just enough to see her fully. The damp, cold air from the hallway rushed in. Her eyes widened, a desperate hope flooding into them. "Alex, please, just 5 minutes. You shouldn't be here, Qley. I asked you not to contact me. I know I messed up. I was stupid." The words tumbled out in a rehearsed rush. "Mark, he took money from me. He lied about everything. He was seeing someone else the whole time." She choked on a sob. "Everything you ever said about him was right." I waited. I didn't offer a tissue. I didn't step aside to let her in from the rain. I just stood there, a polite sentinel at the border of my new life. "That's unfortunate," I said, my voice flat. "Unfortunate?" She recoiled as if struck. The victim's script was faltering. That's all you have to say? He stole from me, Alex. I'm out $3,000. My friends are laughing at me. You should file a police report, I said, offering the logical, impersonal solution. It's a matter for the authorities. Her face crumpled. The anger was swallowed by a more frantic need. I don't want a police report. I want you. I want us back. I see it all now. I was blind. I took you for granted. There is no us, Qley, I said, the words clean and surgical. There hasn't been for over 2 months. The finality of the time frame, the specific accounting of the days since her choice, seemed to shock her. She'd been living in the dramatic whirlwind of her own crisis. I'd been living a calm, forward-moving life. You don't love me anymore? She whispered, the ultimate, manipulative question. A question designed to trigger a chivalrous denial, to pull a man back into the familiar role of comforter. I met her gaze. There was no cruelty in my eyes, but there was no softness either. Just truth. My feelings are no longer your concern. Our relationship ended the moment you asked me to vacate my bed for him. Goodbye, Qley. I began to close the door. Wait. She shoved her hand against it. The desperation turned sharp, ugly. So that's it. After 3 years, I get a fucking goodbye in a hallway? You're just as cold as everyone said you were. I stopped, the door still ajar. I didn't rise to the insult. I simply gave her one last, measured look. Then it should be a relief that you're free of me. File the report, Qley. Take care of yourself. This time, I closed the door completely. I heard a muffled sob, then the sound of her heels retreating down the hall, faster now. The click of the lock was louder than the ring. I walked back to my couch. My heart rate hadn't spiked. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a profound, weary clarity. The chapter wasn't just closed. The book had been pulped. The text that came to a new, soon-to-be block number an hour later confirmed it. When the heartbroken victim act failed, the true colors bled through. Fine. Be that way. You were always cold anyway. Emotionally stunted. You're just like Mark. You use people, and when they need you, you just walk away. I hope your new life is as lonely as you are. I read them with the detached interest of a linguist studying a dead language. The grammar of blame. The vocabulary of a person who could never, ever be at fault. I deleted the thread and blocked the number without replying. The silence that returned was sweeter than before. The final thread was snipped 8 weeks after I'd left, in the most mundane of places. A coffee shop 3 blocks from our old apartment. I'd stopped going there for months, but my new barista had called in sick, and I had a report to finish. I was in the corner, headphones on, typing away. The familiar smell of roasted beans and the low hum of conversation were just background noise. I didn't see her come in. I felt a presence hovering near my table and looked up. Qley was standing there, holding a chai latte. She was with a friend I vaguely recognized, one of the ones from the Brunch and Complaints Brigade. The friend hung back near the condiment station, pretending to be fascinated by the sugar packets. Qley looked tired, not theatrically disheveled like at my door, but worn thin. The light was gone. She was just a woman in a coffee shop. She managed a weak smile. Alex, you look good. I pulled one headphone away, resting it on my ear. Thank you, I said, the way you thank a stranger who holds a door. An awkward pause stretched. Her friend was watching like it was a tennis match. I'm moving, she blurted out, as if sharing big news. Can't afford the apartment alone. Mark, he cleaned out my savings. She said his name like it was a rotten taste in her mouth, but there was also a hint of a plea. See what he did to me? See how I've suffered? I took a sip of my coffee. It was perfectly cooled. I'm sorry to hear about your financial situation. The phrase was professional, the same one I'd used with a colleague who lost a client. It held sympathy in its dictionary definition, but none in its delivery. Her face fell. The script was failing again. She'd offered her tragedy, and I'd given her a customer service response. That's it. Her voice cracked, a mix of hurt and rising anger. After 3 years? Sorry about your financial situation? Qley, I said, my voice calm and low, forcing her to lean in slightly to hear, breaking the illusion of a public scene. That chapter is closed. I've moved on. I suggest you do the same. Dwelling isn't healthy. Moved on. Her eyes scanned me, then darted around as if looking for evidence. With someone else? The question was pure, undiluted possession. I almost smiled. It was the wrong question. The irrelevant question. Whether I'm alone or with someone is irrelevant to us. What matters is I'm at peace. And you, I said, my gaze steady and final, are not my responsibility. Not your feelings, not your finances, not your recovery. She stared, her lips parted. The truth was a pill she couldn't swallow. I was not her backup plan. I was not her audience for repentance. I was a closed door. You never loved me, did you? She whispered, the last weapon in her arsenal, designed to wound. I didn't flinch. I gave her the honest, devastating answer. I did, more than you understood. But love requires respect. You showed me exactly where I stood, so I stood somewhere else. I gestured vaguely to the space around me, the coffee shop, the city beyond, my whole new world. Somewhere better. The finality of it, the simple, unassailable logic, seemed to hollow her out. All the arguments, the justifications, the blame, died in her throat. There was nothing to fight against because I wasn't fighting. I was just stating facts. I saw the moment she truly understood. Her shoulders slumped. The performance ended. What was left was just a sad, exhausted woman facing the unchangeable consequences of her own choices. Take care of yourself, Qley, I said, my tone firm but not unkind. It was a dismissal, but a definitive one. Truly, I placed the headphone back over my ear, picked up my coffee, and stood. I gave a slight, polite nod, not to her, but to her friend still gawking by the sugars. Then I walked to the door, where my colleague Ben was just walking in, waving. Sorry I'm late, Ben said. Traffic was a nightmare. No problem, I said, pushing the door open. I got a head start on the report. Let's grab a table. As the door swung shut behind us, I didn't look back. I didn't wonder what she was doing. I didn't feel a surge of victory or pity. I just felt the crisp autumn air on my face and the pleasant weight of the work ahead with a friend. The last thread was cut. It made no sound at all. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.